Welcome back everyone to Piano Made Simple. In this episode, we will be reviewing step, clefs, and note names, half and whole steps, and also accidentals. So let's get started with the first part, staff, clefs, and note names. So, the grand staff is basically where all the notes and rests are located in a piece of music. It is also referred to the musical staff, or staves if you're talking about two. A staff is made of 5 parallel horizontal lines containing 4 spaces between them, as shown in the. There are two types of staves: the treble clef staff, which is used for the right hand notes, and the bass clef staff, which is used for the left hand notes. The treble bass clef is the one on top, and the bass clef is the one on the bottom. Each line and space in either of the clefs contains a variety of notes, and these notes are given the name of A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. And once G is over, it repeats again, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Every time the notes repeat over again is called an octave. So, for example, from A to A is an octave because 8 notes are played. Now let's talk about the treble clef, which is for the higher pitched notes. The treble clef contains all the notes above middle C. These notes are usually played with the right hand, but not always. A good way to memorize the notes in the treble clef is by using mnemonics. Now, for the lines, you can use "Every good boy does fine." For the spaces, they spell out the word face, so that is very useful for memorizing them. Next, we have the bass clef, which contains the lower pitch notes. The notes in the bass clef are all below middle C. These notes are usually played with your left hand. You can also use mnemonics to memorize the notes in the bass clef. For the lines, you can use "Good boys do fine always," and for the spaces, you can use "All cows eat grass." Here's a wider view of the musical staff, and on the very top, the numbers above the notes are the octaves that divide each of them. Now let's move on to another concept of half and whole steps and accidentals. Now, the piano is made up of octaves that have 8 keys in between. These 8 keys are all white, and when people talk about A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, they're referring to the white keys, which are called the naturals. However, there are also 5 black keys in every octave. Now, think of these as variations of the natural keys, the white ones, and these variations are called accidentals, which we will get to in a little bit. Now, the term step is used to reference the movement from key to key. Remember that both the white and black are represented as keys. So, we have two kinds of steps: a whole step, which always skips a key with one key in between, and a half step, which goes from key to key with no keys in between. Now, using the definitions and this example, let's review. From C to D is a whole step because we're skipping the black key in between both. From D to E is also a whole step because we're also skipping a black key. This next part might seem weird at first, but remember, a half step is from key to key with no keys in between. So from E to F, we have a half step because there are no keys in between. Now continuing from F to G is a whole step because of the black key in between them. G to A is a whole step and A to B is a whole step. Now B to C is also a half step because we're going from key to key and there are no black keys in between. This pattern continues after the C, so it is constant throughout the piano. Understanding steps makes it a bit easier to read music later on, since you won't have to memorize all the notes in the piano. Instead, you can use steps, the lines, and the spaces to figure out the next note. Now, what are these all accidentals that we are talking about throughout the video? Well, accidentals are notations used to raise or lower a natural note pitch on the staff by a half step. In this chart, you can see the symbols for different accidentals. Once you apply an accidental to a note, it stays with the note unless told otherwise. Now let's take a look at what each does, and in a moment we'll see some examples. A sharp raises a note one half step. A flat lowers a note one half step. A natural cancels an accidental. A double sharp raises a note a whole step, and a double flat lowers a note a whole step. Now let's look at some examples. Remember, this is the treble clef, so for the lines we use every good boy does fine. For the spaces we use face. So let's go in with the first one. Every good. Second line, the note is G, and the symbol next to it is a sharp. Therefore, we have a G sharp here. And as you can see on the little keyboard below, it will show you where the note you will play. So our original note is G, and when it is G sharp, it is raised a half step up. So now we play that black note next to it. Let's move on to the next one. Now, this note seems to be on a space rather than a line. And when we learned earlier in this video, for the spaces on the treble clef, we use face. And this is the first note on the space, so it is an F. And it also has a sharp symbol, so it is an F sharp. Now, take a look at the picture below it. It is raised half a step up, with no notes in between. So that's where the F sharp would be played. Finally, our last example. Remember, this note is on a line, and we use every good boy does fine. Every, so it is an E. It also has a sharp symbol, so it is also raised a half step. Remember from what we learned previously, that for a half step there are no keys in between. So E sharp would just be an F. Now let's take a look at flats. It's a similar concept to sharps, but instead of raising it a pitch up, we're lowering a pitch down by a half step. Let's take a look at the first example. We are still in the treble clef, so we're still using every good boy does fine and face. Now this note is on a line, so every good boy does fine. G, this note is a G and it has a flat, so we're going to lower it a half step. Now on the picture below, G, the red one, is the natural, but when we play it flat, it is the blue key. So we would be playing that black key if they gave us G flat. The next note seems to be on a third line. Every good boy does fine. Boy, so it is a B. And it also has a flat, so we lower it one pitch down, and that blue key would be the B flat. Finally, the last one is on a space, face, so it is an F, and it also has a flat, so we lower it half a step down, and a half step has no keys in between. So if they gave us an F flat, we would basically be playing the key of E. Now let's take a look at double flats and double sharps. Let's begin with the first one, which is also on the treble clef. We have every good boy does fine on the second line, so it is a G. Remember, a regular flat is basically a half step down. A double flat is a whole step down. As we learned before, a whole step has a key in between. So we have G in red, the original, and a double flat down would be F, because we would play the black key between them and F, one key in between. Now let's take a look at the double sharp next to it. We have in the treble clef, it is also a G, every good boy does fine. And we just move a whole step up. With one key in between, we play the black key and A, making it a double sharp. So basically, a double flat G would be F, and a double sharp G would be A. Remember, in a music sheet, you will see these symbols everywhere. And once it is placed on a note, it stays with that note, unless it is cancelled, with the middle symbol a natural.